The Discovery. The autumn wind whistled through Colorado's high country as Nathan Harris checked his backpack one final time before heading out on patrol. 20 years as a combat medic followed by 5 years as a wilderness guide had taught him to always be prepared, especially on nights like this when the air felt charged with possibility. His cabin, perched at 9,000 feet in the remote San Juan Mountains, served as both home and ranger station. The nearest town was 30 miles away, which suited Nathan just fine. After 3 tours in Afghanistan, he'd found peace in the solitude of these peaks. The first sign that this night would be different came as a deep vibration that rattled his coffee mug. Nathan stepped onto his porch, eyes scanning the star-filled sky. A brilliant purple streak cut across the heavens, moving too slowly and erratically to be a meteor. The object changed direction twice before disappearing behind Mount Wilson's peak. "That's new," Nathan muttered, grabbing his medical kit and rescue gear. Whatever it was, it had gone down in his territory. If someone needed help, he wouldn't hesitate despite the strangeness of the situation. The drive up the old mining road tested his truck's four-wheel drive. Fresh snow from yesterday's storm crunched under his tires as he followed the direction of the crash. The object's descent had left a clear trail, broken treetops, and a faint purple glow reflecting off the clouds above. He found it in a small clearing, a vessel about the size of a small bus, its crystalline surface fractured but still somehow elegant. Steam rose where heated sections met snow, and pulses of soft purple light emanated from within. Nathan approached cautiously, his flashlight beam revealing intricate patterns etched into what appeared to be a doorway. "Hello?" he called out, keeping his voice steady and professional. "I'm a medic. I'm here to help if anyone's injured." A soft chiming sound answered him, followed by what could only be a moan of pain. The door had a slight gap where it had been damaged. Nathan wedged his fingers into it and pulled, his muscles straining until it finally gave way with a crystalline chiming sound. What he saw inside made him forget to breathe. A being lay curled on her side. He somehow knew it was female, with skin that seemed made of living crystal. Her surface caught and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the vessel's interior. Her face was elegantly angular, with features that reminded him of cut gemstones, and what appeared to be hair flowed like liquid crystal down her back. But what struck him most were her eyes, deep purple pools that locked onto his with unmistakable intelligence and fear. Her form was clearly pregnant, the crystalline surface of her abdomen swollen and pulsing with internal light. She was also injured, with several fractures running across her crystalline skin that leaked a luminescent purple fluid. She reached toward him with a trembling hand, making that chiming sound again. This time it clearly conveyed desperation and hope. Nathan didn't hesitate. His medical training kicked in, overriding any shock or disbelief. "I'm going to help you," he said slowly, touching his chest. "Nathan." He then gestured to her with a questioning look. She touched her own chest, making a sound like wind through crystal caves. "Starla." The name wasn't quite accurate, but it was as close as his human tongue could manage. Another pulse of pain made her curl inward, the light within her dimming noticeably. Nathan checked the night sky. More snow was coming, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. He had to get her somewhere warm and safe. "I'm going to move you," he said, miming lifting motions. "My cabin's not far." Starla seemed to understand. When he carefully lifted her, he was surprised by how light she was, as if her crystalline form was mostly hollow. Her skin was warm to the touch despite its appearance, and the light within her pulsed in time with what he assumed was a heartbeat. Getting her into his truck proved challenging, but once settled, she seemed fascinated by the vehicle's interior. Her fingers traced the dashboard's contours while making soft chiming sounds that reminded Nathan of wind chimes. As he drove carefully down the mountain, Nathan's mind raced with implications. He'd just made first contact with an alien being. She was injured, pregnant, and clearly running from something. His cabin was remote enough to be safe, but he'd need supplies, medical equipment, and a plan. The snow began to fall more heavily as they approached his cabin. Starla's light had dimmed further, her crystalline skin taking on a worrying opacity. Nathan parked as close to the door as possible and carried her inside, the warmth of his wood stove welcoming them. As he laid her gently on his couch, Starla's eyes widened at the cabin's interior. The simple furniture, medical supplies, and communication equipment seemed to fascinate her. But another wave of pain made her curl inward, her light flickering like a candle in the wind. Nathan knew the next few hours would challenge everything he'd learned as a medic. But looking at Starla's brave yet frightened eyes, he felt absolutely certain he was doing the right thing. Sometimes, he reflected, the greatest adventures in life come disguised as simple acts of kindness. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering their tracks and hiding them from whatever fate Starla had fled. Inside, Nathan prepared for what would prove to be the most important night of his life. One that would transform him from a solitary ex-medic into something he never expected to be, a father to stars. The birth. The blizzard intensified as Nathan gathered his medical supplies. Starla's crystalline form pulsed with increasingly irregular patterns of light, and her chiming vocalizations had taken on an urgent tone. Nathan had assisted with births before during his tours as a combat medic, but this was entirely different territory. "We need to get whatever you might have brought for medical care," he said, gesturing to the crashed vessel visible through the window. Starla's eyes widened with understanding. She made a series of sharp crystalline tones and pointed to what looked like a compartment in her vessel. "I'll go," Nathan said firmly, already pulling on his winter gear. "You focus on staying stable." The bitter wind nearly knocked him off his feet as he forced his way through deepening snow. Inside the vessel, he found what appeared to be a medical kit, crystal containers filled with luminescent fluids and devices that hummed with energy. He also grabbed a large crystal that seemed to respond to his touch, glowing warmly. When he returned, Starla's face brightened at the sight of the supplies. She quickly guided him through gestures to understand their use. The large crystal, when placed near her, seemed to stabilize her vital signs, its glow synchronizing with her own internal light. As the night progressed, Nathan fell back on his medical training while adapting to the alien physiology before him. Starla's crystalline skin had become almost transparent, revealing intricate networks of light flowing within. The triplets were visible as three distinct sources of brilliance, each pulsing with their own unique rhythm. "You're doing great," Nathan encouraged, though he knew she couldn't understand the words. But his calm, steady presence seemed to help. Starla's hand found his, and where they touched, their energies seemed to harmonize, his human warmth meeting her crystalline light. The birth itself was unlike anything Nathan could have imagined. As Starla's contractions intensified, the entire cabin filled with prismatic light. The air itself seemed to crystallize, transforming the simple log structure into something out of a dream. Nathan had to shield his eyes as the light reached an almost blinding intensity. Then came the sound, not crying, but rather three distinct crystal tones, pure and clear as mountain streams. As the light dimmed to a manageable level, Nathan lowered his hand and gasped in wonder. Three tiny beings, each about the size of his palm, lay in Starla's arms. Their crystalline forms were softer than their mother's, almost translucent, and each pulsed with its own unique pattern of light. The first sparkled like sunlight through morning frost, the second shimmered like moonlight on snow, and the third danced with aurora-like waves of color. Starla looked exhausted but radiant, her own light steady and strong once more. She carefully lifted the triplets, offering them to Nathan. With trembling hands, he cradled the tiny beings. The moment they touched his skin, he felt a connection, not just physical, but something deeper. The baby's lights synchronized briefly with his own body heat, creating a harmony he couldn't explain but innately understood. "Hello, little ones," he whispered, and to his amazement, their lights brightened in response to his voice. Starla made a sound like crystal wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Laughter, he realized. She pointed to each baby in turn, making distinct tonal patterns that Nathan interpreted as names. The one that sparkled like frost, she indicated, was to be called Celeste. The Moonlight Child became Luna, and the Aurora baby was named Aurora. Nathan repeated the names as best he could, making Starla chime with amusement at his attempts. As the storm raged outside, Nathan helped Starla feed the triplets with drops of luminescent fluid from her medical supplies. Each baby absorbed the light directly through their crystalline surface, their tiny forms glowing brighter with each feeding. They seemed fascinated by Nathan, reaching for him with tiny hands that left trails of light in the air. The next few days passed in a blur of wonder and adjustment. Nathan quickly learned that crystal babies, while different in composition, needed many of the same things as human infants: warmth, comfort, and constant attention. They communicated through pulses of light and gentle chiming sounds that became increasingly distinct. Starla grew stronger each day, her fractured surfaces healing into beautiful patterns that caught the light. She watched with obvious joy as Nathan cared for her children, his large hands impossibly gentle with their delicate forms. Through gestures and shared moments, they began developing their own language of understanding. One evening, as Nathan sat in his rocking chair with Aurora, her light patterns swaying gently with the motion, he caught Starla watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. She approached slowly, placing one hand on his shoulder while looking down at her child. The touch sent a warm current through him, and in that moment, something profound passed between them: trust, gratitude, and the beginnings of family. Aurora reached up, touching Nathan's face with tiny crystal fingers that left traces of light on his skin. Then came a sound that changed everything. Not the musical tones of her native language, but a clear, sweet word: Papa. Nathan's heart stopped. He looked at Starla, uncertain how she would feel about this development. But she was smiling, her whole form glowing with joy. She touched her chest, making her name tone, then touched Nathan's chest and repeated Aurora's word: Papa. Celeste and Luna, not to be outdone, joined in from their makeshift crystal cradle, their voices chiming Papa in harmonic tones that filled the cabin with music. Nathan felt tears in his eyes as he realized that somehow, impossibly, he had become father to 3 stars. The moment was perfect, which meant, of course, that it couldn't last. Later that night, after the triplets had fallen asleep, their lights pulsing softly in time with their dreams, Starla grew serious. Through careful gestures and drawings, she began to explain why she had fled to Earth and what might be following her. Nathan listened with growing concern, but his resolve never wavered. These 4 beings of light and crystal had become his family, and he would protect them with everything he had. As if sensing his thoughts, the triplets' lights brightened in their sleep, reaching out to twine with his human warmth in a dance of trust and love that transcended species. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, some perhaps hiding secrets of their own. Inside, in a cabin high in the Colorado mountains, a most unusual family slept peacefully, their lights merging into a symphony of belonging that would soon be tested in ways none of them could imagine. Learning to be family. Spring came to the mountains, bringing with it new challenges and joys for the unconventional family. The triplets grew rapidly, their crystalline forms becoming more defined while retaining a childlike softness. Each developed distinct personalities that shone through their light patterns. Celeste, the eldest by moments, was the explorer. Her frost-like patterns would intensify with excitement whenever she discovered something new. She was the first to hover, a development that nearly gave Nathan a heart attack when he found her floating near the cabin's ceiling one morning, chiming with delight at her newfound ability. Luna, the moonlight child, was quieter but deeply observant. She spent hours watching the interplay of light and shadow, learning to bend both around herself in ways that left Nathan breathless with wonder. She was also the most empathetic, her light dimming or brightening in response to others' emotions. Aurora, the youngest, was pure joy given form. Her aurora-like patterns danced constantly, and she had an uncanny ability to make plants grow by singing to them in crystal tones. The cabin was now filled with flowers that bloomed year-round, their petals taking on subtle luminescent qualities under her care. Nathan adapted his cabin to accommodate his light-filled children. He installed special crystals from Starla's ship at key points, creating an energy field that helped mask their unique signatures from detection. The triplets learned to dim their lights when strangers might be nearby, though such occasions were rare in their remote location. Communication evolved naturally. Starla and the children learned English with remarkable speed, while Nathan struggled but gradually improved with their crystalline language. They developed a blend of both, peppered with light patterns and gestures that became their own unique family dialect. "Papa, watch," Celeste called one morning, her voice chiming like ice in sunlight. She had discovered she could create tiny crystalline structures in the air, manipulating light and matter in ways that defied physics as Nathan understood it. Luna quickly joined in, adding shadows that made the crystals dance, while Aurora harmonized with both, creating a miniature light show in the cabin's main room. Starla watched her daughter's display with pride, but Nathan caught the worry in her light patterns. Each new ability the children developed made them more remarkable, and potentially more detectable to whatever forces had caused their mother to flee her homeworld. The truth about their situation emerged gradually through their growing communication. Starla's people, the Lumini, were beings of living crystal and light who had evolved in a distant star system. Their ability to manipulate energy and matter had made them both powerful and vulnerable. A faction within their society, the Shadowcasters, had begun experimenting with forcing evolutionary changes, particularly in children. Starla had been a healer, like Nathan, and had discovered the horrible truth about these experiments. The triplets she carried were natural mutations, rare but beautiful variations that occurred sometimes among their people. The Shadowcasters wanted them for study, caring nothing for their individual rights or lives. "You save us," Starla said one evening, her crystal tones blending with carefully pronounced English. "Give us home. Give children father." Nathan looked at his family, because that's what they were now, beyond any doubt. The triplets were playing a game of their own invention, combining their abilities to create ephemeral sculptures of light and crystal while giggling in harmonious chimes. Starla sat nearby, her own light patterns reflecting contentment and love. "You gave me something too," Nathan replied softly. "You gave me purpose again. Family." The moment was interrupted by Luna's excited cry. She had created her most complex shadow work yet, a perfect replica of their cabin and the surrounding forest, floating in midair like a three-dimensional photograph made of darkness and light. "Beautiful, Starshine," Nathan praised, using the nickname he'd given her. Luna beamed, quite literally, her happiness filling the room with gentle moonlight. But their peaceful existence was about to face its greatest test. That night, after the children were asleep in their crystal-lined beds, Starla's light patterns shifted to show deep concern. She guided Nathan outside, pointing to a particular constellation. "They come," she said simply, her light dimming with fear. Soon, Nathan took her hand, feeling the familiar harmony of their energies meeting, human warmth and crystal light. "Then we'll be ready," he promised. "No one will take our family apart." Back inside, the triplets stirred in their sleep, their lights reaching out instinctively to twine with both their mother's crystal glow and their father's human warmth. The connection between them had grown stronger than any of them had expected, creating something entirely new in the universe. A bridge between stars and earth, crystal and flesh, light and shadow. Nathan knew that defending this miracle would require everything he had learned in both war and peace. But looking at his sleeping children, their lights pulsing in peaceful dreams, he knew that some things were worth any risk, any sacrifice. Above their mountain home, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, hiding both threats and promises in their distant light. But within the cabin's walls, a new kind of light had taken root, the light of family, of love that transcended species and space itself. That light, Nathan vowed, would not be extinguished. The next phase of their journey was approaching, and they would face it as they had faced everything else, together, their lights joined in an unbreakable bond of family. The hunters. The warning came at dawn. Nathan woke to find all four of his crystal family members glowing with unusual intensity, their light patterns showing clear distress. Starla stood by the window, her form nearly transparent with fear as she traced symbols in the air with light. "Ships," she whispered, her crystal tones sharp with urgency. 3. Shadowcasters. The triplets huddled together in their corner, their normally bright lights dimmed to barely visible glows. At 4 years old, they understood enough to be frightened, but not enough to hide their powers completely. Aurora's fear made the houseplants wilt, while Luna's shadows grew darker, and Celeste's frost patterns spread across the windows. "Hey," Starlings, Nathan said softly, gathering them close. Remember what we practiced? The children nodded, their lights synchronizing into a softer, more controlled pattern. Starla had spent months teaching them to mask their energy signatures, but they were still so young. Nathan's military training kicked in as he quickly assessed their options. The cabin was prepared. They'd known this day might come. Crystal tech from Starla's ship had been integrated into the structure, creating a shield that could hide their energy signatures. But it wouldn't hold against a direct scan, and the Shadowcasters would be thorough. "Papa," Luna whispered, her moonlight patterns forming complex shapes in the air. "I can feel them. Cold lights. Empty." Nathan's heart clenched. Luna's sensitivity to energy patterns had grown stronger each day. She could sense emotions through light itself, a gift that was both wonderful and terrible in moments like this. A deep thrumming filled the air, making the cabin's windows vibrate. Through gaps in the frost-covered glass, Nathan saw them. 3 ships, black as deep space, their surfaces seeming to absorb rather than reflect light. They moved with precision, forming a triangle around the mountain peak where they'd found Starla's crashed ship years ago. "They track old ship," Starla explained, her crystal tones tight with tension. "Follow energy trail." She placed her hands on the children, her light merging with theirs protectively. "Must hide. Must run." Nathan grabbed their emergency packs, always ready, always stocked. Years in combat had taught him to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Each pack contained supplies specifically designed for crystal beings, developed through careful experimentation with Starla. "The caves," he said firmly. "We've prepared them, remember? The crystal formations will help hide your signatures, and I know every tunnel and passage in that system." A sharp beam of dark energy cut through the morning sky, scanning the mountainside. The triplets whimpered in harmony, their lights flickering with fear. Nathan saw figures emerging from the ships, tall, crystalline forms like Starla, but wrong somehow. Their surfaces were sharp, angular, absorbing light rather than emanating it. "Hurry," Starla urged, gathering the children. But Nathan paused, checking his old military gear one last time. The knowledge he'd gained about crystal beings over the years, combined with his combat experience, might be their only advantage. They slipped out the back door just as the first scanning beam swept over the cabin. Nathan led them through paths he'd spent years memorizing, chosen specifically because the mineral content of the rocks would help mask crystal energy signatures. "Papa," Celeste whispered, floating slightly to avoid leaving footprints in the morning dew. "I'm scared." "I know, Starshine," Nathan replied softly, helping Aurora over a fallen log. "But remember what I taught you. Sometimes being scared is okay. It means you're being careful when you need to be." Luna suddenly stiffened, her moonlight patterns flaring in warning. "They're coming," she breathed. 3 groups. Hunting patterns. Nathan nodded grimly. Classic search and containment formation. Some things were universal, it seemed, even among the stars. He led them into a narrow ravine, one that would look like a dead end to anyone who didn't know about the hidden cave entrance behind the waterfall. As they moved deeper into the mountain's heart, Nathan's mind raced with plans and contingencies. The cave system was extensive, with multiple exits and natural features that could help hide crystal energy signatures. He'd spent years mapping it, preparing it as a sanctuary. But as they reached the main chamber, something changed. The triplets suddenly stopped, their lights pulsing in perfect synchronization. Luna's shadows spread across the cave walls, while Celeste's frost patterns emerged from nowhere, and Aurora's energy made ancient cave flowers bloom with unprecedented light. "Children," Starla whispered, her voice filled with awe and fear.
No.
Nathan understood. The triplets were coming into their full powers, triggered by the stress and danger. It was beautiful, magnificent, and possibly about to give away their position to every crystal sensor in the mountain range. The cave's ceiling crystallized with impossible patterns of frost and shadow, illuminated by aurora-like waves of light. The children's powers were combining, growing, transforming the very rock around them into something that had never existed on Earth before. "Papa," they said in unison, their voices chiming like cathedral bells. "We won't let them take us." We won't let them hurt our family. Before Nathan could respond, Luna's shadows detected movement at the cave's entrance. The Shadowcasters had found them. But as Nathan reached for his weapons, he realized this confrontation might not play out the way anyone expected. His children were no longer just frightened refugees. They were something new, something that had never existed before. Human spirit and crystal power, Earth and stars combined in ways the Shadowcasters couldn't possibly understand. And as the dark ships descended toward the mountain's peak, Nathan prepared to show these cosmic hunters exactly what happened when they threatened a family protected by both human determination and stellar light. The final confrontation was about to begin, and its outcome would determine not just their fate, but possibly the future relationship between two very different species from distant corners of the universe. Protecting what matters. The cave thrummed with power as the Shadowcasters approached. Through Luna's shadow sensing, Nathan could see them clearly. 12 crystalline figures, their forms sharp and angular, absorbing light rather than emanating it. They moved with military precision, their own powers reaching out like dark tendrils. Submit to collection, a voice rang out, somehow both crystalline and hollow. The aberrations must be studied. Resistance is inefficient. Nathan stepped forward, positioning himself between the hunters and his family. Those aberrations are my children, he said firmly, and they're not going anywhere. The lead Shadowcaster tilted its head, dark energy crackling around its form. Human, you are irrelevant to this procedure. The specimens? Their names, Nathan interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of both soldier and father, are Celeste, Luna, and Aurora. They're not specimens. They're children. They're my daughters. Behind him, the triplets' power continued to grow, transforming the cave into something extraordinary. Celeste's frost patterns merged with Luna's shadows, while Aurora's light filled the crystalline structures with impossible colors. Starla added her own power to theirs, creating a harmony of energies that made the very air sing. The Shadowcasters raised their hands, dark energy gathering. The contamination is worse than anticipated. Human influence has corrupted. They never finished. Luna's shadows suddenly surged forward, not attacking but revealing. Through her power, everyone in the cave could see the truth, the memories, the love, the countless moments that had forged their family. Nathan teaching the triplets to read, their lights brightening with each new word. Starla singing crystal songs under the stars. First steps, first words, first flights. This is what you'll never understand, Nathan said quietly. Love isn't contamination. It's evolution. The triplets moved as one, their combined power creating something never seen on Earth or among the stars. Celeste's frost formed perfect crystals that Luna's shadows brought to life, while Aurora's light filled them with warmth and growth. The cave became a living testament to what was possible when different worlds came together. We are not your experiments, the children said in harmony, their voices carrying the music of stars. We are something new. The lead Shadowcaster stepped forward, dark energy pulsing. The protocol demands. The protocol is wrong, Starla interrupted, her own light blazing. Look at them. Really look. They're not aberrations. They're the future. Nathan felt it then, a warmth in his chest where Starla had shared her power years ago. That seed of crystal energy had grown, changed, become something unique. As he reached for his children, his own faint light merged with theirs, adding Earth's strength to stellar power. The cave exploded with light and shadow, frost and growth, human warmth and crystal song. The triplets' power, guided by love rather than fear, transformed the Shadowcaster's dark energy into something new. Where there had been sharp angles, now there were gentle curves. Where there had been void, now there was light. Impossible, the lead Shadowcaster whispered, its own form beginning to change. The patterns there, beautiful, Nathan finished, because they're free to be themselves, to grow, to love. The transformation spread like a wave through all the Shadowcasters. Their forced evolution, designed to eliminate emotion and enhance power, began to reverse. Light returned to their forms, not uniform but unique, each finding its own pattern. Luna stepped forward, her moonlight touching each transformed hunter. "You forgot," she said softly. "Stars aren't meant to be controlled. They're meant to shine." Celeste and Aurora joined their sister, their combined power filling the cave with a display that rivaled the aurora borealis. But this was more than just light. It was healing, remembrance, the awakening of long-suppressed truths. The lead Shadowcaster looked at its hands, now glowing with gentle light. We lost our way. Forgot what we were meant to be. "Then remember," Starla said, her voice full of the healer's wisdom that had first led her to flee. "And help others remember too." One by one, the former Shadowcasters knelt, their lights joining the symphony of power that filled the cave. The children's gift had awakened something long dormant in their kind, the ability to feel, to grow, to love. Nathan gathered his family close, their lights merging into a single brilliant glow. Human warmth and crystal light, earth and stars, all coming together in a harmony that proved some bonds transcended the very forces of evolution. "What now?" Aurora asked, her light patterns dancing with new possibilities. Nathan smiled, looking at the transformed hunters who were now experiencing emotion for the first time in generations. "Now, Starshine, we help them remember what family means. And maybe we build a bridge between our worlds." "Home," Starla said simply, taking his hand. Where their energies met, new patterns formed, not human, not Lamini, but something wonderfully, perfectly unique. The triplets giggled in crystal tones, their powers now gentle, but no less magnificent. They had faced their greatest fear and found not victory through force, but transformation through love. Above the mountain, the dark ships began to change, their surfaces softening to reveal the true nature of Lamini craft, vessels of light and hope. And in a cave deep in the Colorado Rockies, two species began to heal, guided by the love of one very special family. For Nathan, watching his crystal children share their gift of freedom with others, it was proof of what he'd always believed, that sometimes the greatest power in the universe wasn't in the light of distant stars, but in the light of love that burned in hearts both human and crystal. The story wasn't ending, he realized. In many ways, it was just beginning. And whatever came next, they would face it together, their lights joined in an unbreakable bond that stretched from the mountains of Earth to the distant stars themselves.